In this video, we will be making a sort of painting application inside of Scratch, where you can make our own personalized drawings and paintings and save them and load them after we've finished painting them. This is part one of a two-part series where we'll learn how to create a painting algorithm so that we can paint whatever we want. In part two, we'll utilize these save and load functions to never lose a piece of artwork. Excited? Let's get started. Alright, so I've started out with a couple of sprites here, a tile sprite, color selector sprite, save button, and load button. We'll work on the save button and load button next time for the part two of this video. For today, we'll just be working on the tile sprite and color selector sprite. Okay, so first we are going to want to make a grid of tiles that we can paint on. So we'll start off by creating a couple of variables. Let's make a variable called clone number. Make sure you tick for all sprites, that's very important. Or, sorry, for this sprite only, that is very important. Make sure you click for this sprite only. Now let's say number of clones. For this one, it's important that you click for all sprites. And that's all we're going to need for now. So we can go ahead and untick these boxes so they won't appear on the screen. And we'll say when flag clicked, set clone number to 0. And set number of clones to 0 as well. So number of clones will basically be the amount of tile clones we have on the screen. So each time we create a new clone of the tile, we'll basically change this variable by 1. Clone number, you'll notice we set it for each sprite has its own variable of that. And when you tick that option, actually each clone of a sprite gets its own variable. That way it's basically a clone ID for each clone that we create. Okay, now we want to go ahead and repeat, let's say, 20 times, create clone of myself, and remember to change number of clones by 1. Okay, now we can drag a one I start as a clone block. And the most important thing for when we create a tile clone is getting the positioning right. Because as we can see, if I just run this code, all 20 clones are being created, but they're only they're all on top of each other, so you can only really see one sprite. So we need to be able to orient them properly. So we can say when I start as a clone, move 10 steps, or let's say 10 times clone number of clones step. Okay, the spacing is not exactly accurate. Let's try 30. And 30 looks pretty good. Now we need to make sure that when we get to the end of a row, we create a new one. We have multiple columns, but we only have one row. And that will be moving in the Y direction. So we can have this, but let's just make a set clone number to number of clones. Let's set clone number to number of clones, and this will just give each clone its unique identifier. So now we can, instead of saying number of clones, just say clone number, and it should work just the same. And yeah, there we are. Okay, now we need to make sure that at a certain point this wraps around and starts as a new row. And what we can do for this is actually the mod function. So the way the mod function works is if I take, say, 17 mod 12, I would basically divide 17 by 12. So 12 goes into 17 one time, and the remainder would be 5. So 17 mod 12 would be 5. And so say we wanted 12 in a row. 12 in a row, I think, would get us somewhat accurately centered. Yeah, right about that. And so if we do mod 12, say the 13th clone would have to wrap around to the next row because its remainder would be 1. So let's just say clone number mod 12 and multiply that by 30. And let's just change this back to 20. And as you can see, it stops and then it goes back here, but we can't actually visualize that. So let's also change our y value and make sure, and just duplicate this and make sure we have negative 30. And instead of doing mod this time, we want to say clone number divided by 12. And so if we go back to our 1712 example, clone number divided by 12 would be 1 point something, right? So we just want to take the 1 part of that, not the decimal part. So we can use this floor function, and that will just take the 1 part of that. It won't take the decimal part. So once we do that, and we see it wraps around pretty nicely, and let's say we want to do this 96 times. That will give us 8 different rows of 12 columns. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think we've done a bit too much here. So instead of 96, let's try 72. Oh, and it looks like I messed up. We have to remember that we have the original tile as well. So that would mean we only need 71 clones. So let's run this one final time. And yeah, here we have a bunch of tiles. Alright, great. Now, the next and pretty much final thing we need to do for this part 1 is the drawing, the color. So let's go to the color selector, and we can see, let me zoom in a bit. We can see inside of our costumes, I have 5 different costumes. Inside this sprite, I also have 5 different costumes. They're the same color, and what's important is that they're in the same order, and that in the tile sprite specifically, I've numbered them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you do not do this, the code we will be using will not work, so make sure you number them correctly. Okay, let's go to the color sprite. So we're going to want to create a variable called current color. For all sprites. Make sure you tick for all sprites. It's really important. Okay. So when flag clicked, we want to set current color to 1. So essentially what current color is, it is the costume number. This variable right here. Costume number. So costume number 1 would be this blank. Costume number 2 would be red, 3, green, 4, blue, 5, yellow. So this is the color selector. So we want to say that every time we click this, it changes to a different color that we can use. So when clicked, or when the sprite clicked, we can say next costume. And we'll say when flag clicked, switch costume to costume 1. Okay. So now this is loading up, and we can see we can cycle through all the different colors. So when the sprite clicked, not only do we want to say next costume, we want to set current color to costume number. And that shouldn't really change anything yet because these are just variables, and it works just fine. Okay, let's go back to our tile sprite. And let's just make it so that when we click any of the tiles, they switch to the color that we're currently using, current color. Okay, first you'll notice that I can just drag these tile sprites just willy-nilly. So what we can do to that is just make each sprite non-draggable. So set drag mode not draggable for both the when flag clicked block section and the when I start as a clone. And you'll see we can still drag, but when we go into full screen, the actual playing mode, we are not able to drag at all. Another problem is the centering. We want to just say go to negative 170, 120. Yeah, perfect. So make sure we add that in. Okay, so when I start as a clone, let's just drag in a forever loop and an if statement. So if we are touching mouse pointer and the mouse is down, so let's drag in an and operator. We want to switch costume to current color. Now you notice this is where it comes in handy to have all these named just as numbers, because current color will always be a number. Okay, let's duplicate this forever loop and add it to our original as well. And finally, let's just say when this sprite is clicked. So not if our mouse is down, if it's just clicked once, we still want the same thing to happen. Switch costume to current color. Okay, let's run this, and let's make sure to say at the start, switch costume to costume 1, so that we start out blank. And just to be safe, let's do it for all the clones as well, even though they should duplicate exactly. Okay, so if I try drawing with green, it draws with green. If I draw with yellow, let me go in full screen so that we won't be able to drag. If I draw with green, I can draw with green. If I draw with yellow, I can draw with yellow. Notice how I can go over the green and change it. If I draw with red, I can draw with red. Blue, and then our white really acts as an eraser, so we can just do that. Okay, and that is it for part 1 of this 2-part series, where we've just made a really painting mechanism that we can use. So watch out for part 2, where we can utilize these save and load buttons so that we never ever lose artwork that we make. Alright, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.